Hey, Ron here. I want to share with you what is probably the biggest mistake that completely destroys looseness in watercolor. So you can probably relate, you're trying to paint a loose painting, you're trying to have watercolor do their thing, have flow. And I'm going to show you on the screen right now. This is so common. So many aspiring painters go through this where you're stuck in an illustration trap. You are just illustrating. You know the shape you want to paint, you know exactly where to paint it, and you paint it step by step by step, slowly adding one detail after another. And by this point, I am personally incredibly bored. And if you keep doing this thing, now is your chance to notice and maybe consider stopping, because it destroys the entire freedom and looseness aspect of watercolor. Watercolor is so much more than that, and if you listen carefully, by the end of this video, you should be able to paint your first truly loose watercolor painting. So let me show you. Let's start small for a second and see what watercolor is capable of doing. There's one other big mistake that I have done here that you might have caught, you might have not. We're going to set this aside. Stay tuned till the end of this process, and you should find the scan of the scene, by the way, in the description box. But I'm going to start small. Let's see if we can figure out an area. Let's get an area down perfectly. Okay, so this looks quite dark, so I'm just starting with a black color, and here's what's going through my mind as I paint this shape. What I'm thinking is, how can I expand it and add the details I'm looking for right here, right now, that's connected to this shape I just put in. It's a relatively dark shape. It's a relatively dark color. I can pause it here almost, and let's see, what do we have here? So I see this kind of a gray. Maybe it's a little cool. So let's add a bit of blue to the mix right now. Forget about large shapes and getting all the small details, not getting all the small details. Forget about painting, paint by numbers. Forget about paint by numbers. I hate painting in watercolor as if it was paint by numbers, for one reason and one reason only. I actually love paint by numbers. It's super cool, it's super fun, it's accessible. But if I'm gonna paint a watercolor, I'm not gonna paint it like a paint by numbers. You can be sure of that. So this window, the shadow on it, because it's white, it looks a little blue. Hint at the second big mistake I've made here in the first attempt. So I'm merging this blue and I'm just letting them flow together. Now, while this is still wet, I can add more details to it. So I see a dark spot here. I'm going to just do that. And then I see some dark lines here. I'm just going to do that. I'm just going to place down these dark lines that I'm seeing. And what is happening here is I'm using watercolor the way they were meant to be used if you want to have the maximum, make the most, the absolute most of what they're capable of doing. So let's paint this side of the wall. So it looks a little, I'm going to pre-wet, and it looks a little, it's warm because the wall is yellow, but it's dark. It's a dark yellow. So a dark yellow could lend itself really well to a brown, and that's gonna, guess what, contrast really well with our windows that have a blue, cool feel to them. Okay, so let's try. Let's see what this looks like. And even if I lost some of the flow, that is fine. I'm just gonna paint this area in and have this lovely smooth transition here, see? And what we've essentially done here, I'm working slowly because I'm also explaining what I'm doing. If I speed it up for a second, then you'll really see the pace at which I would work normally, and you'll see what kind of flow is created. So let me speed it up a bit, and I will talk more specifics in just 1 second, okay? But for now, you can see me kind of using all the colors at my disposal. I'm using ultramarine, I'm using burnt umber, I'm using pretty, I would say pretty regular, normal, routine colors. And what you get on paper is, it's not done yet, but what you get on paper is, guess what? A watercolor painting. This is a watercolor painting. It has the flow, it has the beauty. And you know what? This area is wet because I just smoothened out the edge. Why not use this opportunity that it's still wet and paint the wall? Let's see if we can start painting the rest of this wall that is warm. So check it out. Let's do that. Who says we have to fill in and always merge? I don't have to merge this with anything else. If I want to, I could, or I could blend this edge just to make sure it looks smooth and nice once it's dry, and then if I want to add another layer. But notice what I'm not doing. I'm thinking in terms of what is the shape I'm seeing, and let me paint that, and let me make the most out of the wet paint instead of let's fill in flat shapes and make sure we don't step out of line. You want to see something a little different? Let's do something a little different. Talking about not stepping out of line, let's paint the sky and do it very differently to how we did it earlier. Okay, so I'm going to use this wonderful Michael Soloviev brush. I'm going to paint the sky. Now, I like to rely on my instinct. And yes, that instinct was honed over a lot of experience, but you can rely on your instinct even with little experience. That's the beauty of instinct. It's working in a different kind of field to skill, okay? It's not a skill. Instinct is something I think you're born with, and then you get to refine with time. So check it out. I'm painting the sky, but instead of being very obsessed with how I'm gonna fill this in and illustrate this in one clean, light shape, I don't mind stepping into the building here. In fact, let's do just that. Let's step into the building with a bit of a warmer mix here when we do this. So I stepped into the building, and I have some windows. I can paint around them because some of the windows are white. But look at how rough my shapes are and how it's not perfect. And if you go back to Stop Overworking Watercolors, that video of mine, you'll find that a lot of the overwork stems from trying to always fix the shape perfectly way past its drying time and going back and revisiting and making these patterns that no one really needs, no one asked for. So we're not gonna do that today. We're gonna paint whatever shape we're focused on at the time and slowly but surely establish it. So let's do another one. Let's continue this shadow. I'm continuing this shadow, but I'm not filling in shapes. And that's the big lesson here. I'm not filling shapes up and cleanly like a paint by numbers. What I'm doing is I'm following Watercolor's lead, where it tells me, okay, this is a wet edge I can use. This is an edge I have to stop here. I have to add more details here, add more details there. That's part of instinct. That is true. But there's a lot of fear with not stepping out of line. If you just eliminate that fear, your results are going to skyrocket, okay? Now, if you're looking at this and you're saying, oh, it's actually quite similar to how you painted earlier, I mean, I don't really get it. Well, there are some similarities. I'm not painting completely differently. That's why you can do this. This isn't a huge shift. It's a tweak. It is something small you can fix and have your paintings be loose by tomorrow, okay? Now let's add this little line of separation here. Same goes for this. There's actually some gaps there because there's something there, some kind of things that holding onto it. But look at this thing now. It already speaks, right? It has this lovely feel to it. Now I get a feeling that this entire wall will need to be covered with a bit of more saturated paint. I can let it dry, or I can trust Watercolor's nature and just go for it. And let's take a risk here. Okay, because watercolor is dynamic. It's always changing, it's always shifting. So instead of trying to control it, you'll have a much bigger benefit from being fast to react to what it needs. So instead of controlling it, do what you want to do what your instinct tells you, come hell or high water, because when the time comes for fixing, adjusting, changing in real time, you can do that if you pay attention, if you actually look at what's going on paper. If you don't, if you completely are unaware of what's going on paper, if you're not even trying, you won't be able to catch the things that are going on paper. But if you are aware, you will be able to. And that's a matter of awareness, by the way. It's not a matter of skill, knowledge, all of that stuff. I can paint this entire thing in one go. There we go, a bunch of windows. Then we have these. Look at the beauty of this shape. It feels three-dimensional. It starts to feel like it has depth. And I can stop here and lesson is learned, but we can also go a little further Hopefully you would appreciate me going a little further, because let's do that. Let's not necessarily, like, I'm trying to keep my recent videos a little shorter, but let's see what we can get here. Now look at this. Light comes from above, slightly from above, so shadow is up top because the window is dented inwards. Now this shadow is not fully gray, it's actually black. So now we've come to the other big insight, the big mistake I've made here. It doesn't destroy looseness, but it can destroy a sense of color harmony and temperatures and all of that good stuff. That's also can be quite important, and that is the colors. So here I'm using very basic colors. The wall feels yellowy, so I just use yellow. The sky is blue, I just use ultramarine. There's no variation, there's no specialty to it. I'm using most of the colors straight out of the tube, not to mention I didn't go dark enough and yada yada yada. This shadow, for example, it's not a darker version of that same yellow. Not at all, because there is such a thing called reflected light. And things reflect off of other things. And the white windows, they're actually kind of blue. Now you see there's a huge difference between the two, and so many of you are stuck here, and I would want for you to set yourself free from that. Okay, so notice the colors, look at what you're painting, really look at it carefully. Is it an actual yellow, or is there more complexity to it? Is there more interest to it maybe? Is there something unique about it, right, that we can capture? Now look at the bottom section. We have a bit of reflected light from the ground, meaning there's an area here that's quite light. This area right here, it's facing the ground, and that is light. Now I don't have to wait. Let's, while this is still wet, start mixing another color and simply darkening the section underneath it, right? No one says we have to wait. And again, this will improve. The way you execute upon this will improve with experience. In the beginning, you won't know how to do these things smoothly, and that is okay. I'm not commenting really on the technical prowess here. I'm more talking about, forget about the lines, forget about painting inside the lines. That's just a useless handicap, right? It's a handicap. You're forcing, you're tied with a ball and a chain that you do not need. I give you permission today to let go of that ball and chain. The beauty about this is the result doesn't matter. The result itself doesn't matter. What matters is, did you actually have a fantastic time painting? Were you able to completely submerge yourself in your subject matter, in the thing you're seeing? Were you able to communicate the idea you had in your mind? Whether it's the perfect communication or not, that doesn't matter. What matters is, did you preserve the authenticity of that idea you had in mind? Were you able to do that? This is light. Let's keep it light. And if you were able to do that, to me, that's where the biggest satisfaction comes from. That's where the most fun comes from. And that's where I live when it comes to watercolor painting. This is almost a gray, but it is a little warmer. These details on the windows, we can get down real quick. And you know what? To me, this is the perfect almost first wash that I can then revisit and make improvements to, and bring out the shapes I want and bring out the details I want, and I can do so much with it. Just because we don't care about painting inside the lines carefully and neatly, and not necessarily as a revelatory act, but rather because it's impractical. You know, it's just not as practical in watercolor painting to care about such things. It's just not as useful. What I'm looking for here is practicality. You know, I'm not romantic about how I paint. I don't care. I can change my approach tomorrow. That's not the thing. The thing is, will it get me the result I want? Or, like most aspiring painters, will I end up simply frustrated, bored with the result, and then after a couple of 30 minutes of this boring thing, I will just quit. Now, let me give a bit of a caveat here. You can paint this way. You can paint this way and still have a beautiful result. If in your heart of hearts, that's what you enjoy, and you slowly and gradually build up your subject matter, and you know what the vision is, and you follow it, and you enjoy it, and that, yada yada, all of that good stuff, you can definitely do. But most who I see paint this way, they don't do it because they want to, they do it because they are stuck in a pattern that does not serve them. Now, if you discover that you enjoy building things up slowly and really working in thin glazes, and there are artists who work this way. There's Thierry Duval who makes beautiful watercolors this way. If you truly enjoy working this way, I'll be the last person to stop you from doing that. But what you have to be is honest with yourself, and very often it's not even about that, it's a process of discovery, and with time you understand how much that's the thing you appreciate or that's the thing you enjoy. It can take a bit of a while to discover that, but once you discover that, you know, it's smooth sailing. Now, one thing this also helps us prevent is these awkward gaps between shapes, right? Because we don't care about painting inside the lines here. All we care about is the beauty of the process. Now, if you enjoy this one and you want more of this very same approach, got some paint on my clothes, I don't know, check out the frustration-free watercolor course. It's gonna organize it all for you in your head. It's exactly about that. Break free. Paint the loose watercolors you know you can paint and you are meant to paint. And if you want to take it in a realistic direction, guess what? There's also the Watercolor Realism course. It's actually a nice follow-up to the frustration-free watercolor course. And that's fine once you're comfortable and you feel like you have the freedom and you know what? I actually want to try some realism. I started here quite accurate, you know, with these small details. I started quite accurate and almost, you know, quite realistic. And to be honest, they need to be darker than the sky, so I could go ahead and slowly push this to be even more accurate and more realistic. And that is fine. You don't have to get everything in the first go. Check it out. When you have this nice solid base of allowing yourself to paint the way you want, it's the easiest thing in the world to then bring in realism to it. I hope you'll check out the courses. Links in the description box below. Frustration-free watercolor course. If you enjoyed that kind of thing, this course is exactly for you. It's meant to solve your specific problem. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for commenting. Thank you. Huge thanks to everyone who supports me over on Patreon to get credits at the end of the videos and access to some exclusive processes. A few of them, check it out. Thank you so much. We'll see you in the next vid. Take care.